Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon, and I'm the managing director and co-owner of Impetus Digital, but also the Toronto chapter lead for the transformative technology community. And I want to just welcome all of you for joining today and our wonderful, esteemed Deborah Rozman. I'm going to introduce her in just a minute. I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce you to those of you who are not members yet or not as familiar about the Transformative Technology Group and what we are, what we represent, and why we're here today. We are here to represent all tech that has anything to do with well-being, mental fitness, human health, human well-being. And we sort of like to see that we sort of fit into that really interesting niche, sort of the Ray Kurzweil kind of exponential technology concept. We sort of fit in between neurotech and this exponential technology revolution, if you will. And this is no more relevant than during this period of pre, during, and post-COVID than we ever could have been before. So this is such a relevant time to talk about the acceleration of digital technologies and what this means for mental health, well-being, and for flourishing. And so we are part of this equation, we're part of this revolution and this opportunity and this limitless possibility. And this is really ultimately what the transformative technology community is looking to do, is creating an ecosystem of safety, of friendship, of funding, of great ideas, great education, and getting learnings and nuggets and wisdoms from people like Deborah Rozman, who are going to be able to share ideas as we start to unfold, build, and sustain our businesses. So our goal really at the TTC is to elevate human mind. And the target is really to look at affecting the minds of 1 billion people by 2030. So it is doable, it is feasible, and I think we're all in this together. So this is a really big, audacious, hairy goal, and we're all aiming for this. So at the end of the day, when we're talking about the companies and the ecosystem that we're surrounding ourselves and supporting, is really people who are creating digital components, digital technologies, solutions, and services that fit any of these components, be it AI, digital medicine, neurofeedback, behavioral change. If you're working on AR and VR technologies, healthy spaces technologies, robotics, and on it goes. If you haven't touched base with us yet, we encourage you to reach out. We'd love to actually connect with you, see what kinds of services we can provide and help. You can see that this is the largest ecosystem that's dedicated in the development of transformative technologies. There's a myriad of ways to get involved. There's academies, there's education, there's conferences, and there's a great opportunity now for you to join this organization. You'll see an email from me afterwards, getting a link to this webinar. Also to the wonderful free gift that Deborah is actually going to speak about at the very end. As well as an opportunity to connect as a full member of this community, keeping in mind that there's opportunities for education, learning circles, great levels of support, events, as well as participating in a variety of things like lightning talks, etc. So without further ado, today is going to be one of those education opportunities. We are so thrilled to have the one and only Deborah Rozman, who is the CEO of HeartMath Incorporated. A little bit of background on her, because it's always interesting to find out where people come from. She does have a career and a background in behavioral psychology. So maybe she'll actually speak a little bit about that for us as well, about where she got started. Has had a myriad of roles, has been a serial entrepreneur over the last 30 years in her career, heading up biogenics, quantum intech, which actually later transpired into HeartMath. She's a board member of their institute. She's an author of multiple books and an educator of a series of different kinds of certification courses for coaches, mentors, etc. She has done some amazing, wonderful things, heartfelt and heart leadership tendencies and gravitation towards that. What does that look like? What does that feel like? How to actually run a successful for-profit company, but still leading it with heart-like leadership. So I'm super happy to have Deb with us. And as I was mentioning, she was very kind to provide access to a free gift. So a book that they wrote at HeartMath called Heart Intelligence, Connecting with the Intuitive Guidance of the Heart. They actually have made this into a interactive modular kind of automated book, sort of like an online book that she has given us access to, and she's going to speak a little bit about this. And for those of you who did register for this, you are going to have access to this. So thank you very much in advance, Deborah, for this. So we're going to be starting off with a couple of questions. This is in a really casual fireside chat. Deb has got a wealth of information. I know that a lot of us are coming at this of wanting to understand how Deb got into this. What were some of the successes, really wanting to understand this about the building of a business concept, since many of you are starting or trying to really build out your businesses if you're not just a startup, and we're wanting to tap into that knowledge. So please feel free. I have one of my colleagues, James Besnet, who is going to be capturing any questions that we may have. Please leave those into the chat. You'll see that in the lower right-hand corner, there's 3 dots. You can click on that, add your questions. The other thing as well too is I'd love to get some audience participation. If you'd like to raise your hand or leave a question, we're going to call on you and ask if you'd like to turn your video on and be part of the discussion. So that is it for the presentation component of it. We're going to come back just to myself and to Deb to start on this. So Deb, why don't we actually just start off a little bit about giving us some of the background. You starting your career in behavioral psychology. Maybe you can just take us really quickly through your career and kind of where you landed and how you landed as the CEO of HeartMath. I'm going to unmute you. Sorry, just 1 second. I think you're muted. There we go. I think you're unmuted. There we go. I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Natalie. You know, I would say my career began when I was 4 years old, sitting outside in my home on the steps in Minneapolis, where I was born, and looking up at the green trees and blue sky and wondering, what's it all about? Why am I here? And a voice, which was my own voice in my own mind, was real clear. So you're here to serve. And that stuck with me as a guiding principle, a guiding frequency, if you will, all my life. And first I thought I was to serve as a teacher, you know, because I'm a kindergarten teacher, first grade, second grade as I grew up. I was 4 years old when I sat on those back steps. And then when I got to junior high and had 7 different teachers, I began to look deeper and say, what's it all about? And I began to study psychology at that time. And I went to the University of Chicago to study behavioral psychology and attitude change theory. But it was lots of rats and statistics, and I really wanted to understand myself and people. And I came out to California, where I still am. And that's when Esalen and all of these wonderful new humanistic psychology aspects, East and West, were really launching. And I began to really specialize in Gestalt psychology. And in that process, I realized that the cognitive behavioral approach wasn't always effective at getting to the emotions. And I started a process where I'd have people who had issues have 2 pillows, one the heart, one the head, and sit on the head pillow and have the head talk to their heart, and then switch to the heart pillow and have the heart talk to their head. And they'd go back and forth, and finally, maybe after 3 or 4 times, they'd sort of settle in the heart, and wisdom would come out, and the 2 would come together, and it was always electrifying. It lifted the whole group if I was teaching a class. And I knew there was something about the heart, and I was into meditation and heart-centered meditations. So I wanted to put all this together with research, and I wanted to reach children, because I knew if I could start meditating at 6 or 4, I would have more of a direct line access to my intuitive guidance of purpose. And I wrote the first book on meditating with children that became a bestseller. Long story short, I kept following my inner signals, my inner heart of what would most serve, what would help me understand me and other people better. And that landed me, fast forward, to working in a number of businesses, bringing spirulina to the United States, ion generators. I could go on in my entrepreneurial career, following my heart. But where I ended up was meeting Doc Childry, the founder of HeartMath, and he was talking about wanting to research the intelligence of the heart. And I was riveted. I went, okay, I intuitively know what that means. But he said, we need to help people learn how to listen to those heart signals, how to get aligned heart, brain, nervous system so they can access their higher self or some bigger picture thinking in a systematic way. We wanted to create a simple, user-friendly system by which people could listen to, follow the heart, and activate their higher frontal lobe potentials. And sure enough, research in our HeartMath Institute lab discovered heart rate variability as a means of biofeedback to be able to see what was happening and feel what was happening inside as your emotional and attitudinal state changed. And that started the whole HeartMath mission. And of course, people have jumped on heart rate variability since then in wearables and all sorts of technology. And it's wonderful application for neurofeedback because it adds that alignment to it. So I've been doing that for the last 30 years. And it's been a wonderful, fulfilling adventure.
I just love the work, and especially people who are delving in areas and pioneering in areas like HRV, like heart rate variability. Just recently, biohackers started talking about this. This was definitely not something that was even around or spoken about in the times that you were doing it. So it's really pioneering thinking. So I think these days, because there's so much knowledge and information and data surrounding brain-centered well-being and flourishing and all the work around cognitive neurosciences, tapping into ECG and neurofeedback and Muse and all these sorts of things. How are you sort of combining or merging the two kind of sciences, if you will, brain versus heart? Is there a difference or disparity, or are they the same thing?
Great question. They're not the same thing, but they need to work together. Otherwise, our mind pulls us one way, our emotions another way, and our heart's trying to say something different. We've all had that experience. And what the researchers found, and it was fascinating because in the 90s, it was called the decade of the brain when we first started, but it was really also the decade of the heart. Little known that it was discovered in a whole new field called neurocardiology was born, of how the heart and brain communicate. And that is the key to transformation. And I want to just really emphasize that is the key to transformation. One without the other is missing a whole part of who we are. And the heart was found to be way more than a blood pump. It actually communicates to the brain in 4 different ways. The most powerful way, you might say, besides being the blood pump, which carries information to the brain about how the body feels through the blood, is actually through the nervous system and the vagal nerve that goes from heart to brain. And the neural traffic between the heart and brain is 90% afferent, which means the heart is sending more messages to the brain than the brain is sending to the heart. And that's astounding, because that means the heart and whatever's going on and how it's processing information, and it is an information processing center, is actually telling the brain how the body feels emotionally, energetically. And the brain is an incredible pattern matching instrument, computer, and it responds. And this vagal traffic goes through 2 pathways. One direct to the amygdala, the emotional memory center, which is very involved in trauma and trauma recovery. And the other is to the thalamus, which is responsible for synchronizing cortical function. When we feel stress, anger, frustration, irritation, impatience, all those stressful emotions we justify and feel we have the right to, and we do, they're human. But that signals, the heart signals the brain, because the HRV pattern, which is the interaction of the autonomic nervous system reflected, actually is saying stress, fight, flight, fright, go into survival mode. So it desynchronizes cortical function, and it inhibits our frontal lobe bigger capacity thinking. It actually inhibits it. So we say things we later regret. We feel pulled different directions. We are overreactive. And we get stuck in those dynamics, and they build up anxiety habits, which the amygdala stores. So to be able to reboot this whole operating system, we can with a window into heart rate variability, not just the amount of it, which is what most wearables are measuring now, which is very important for health, recovery, fitness. It's the pattern over time. So when you look at your heart rhythm pattern and it's really smooth, your HRV, usually it's reflecting you feeling calm, appreciative, loving, kind, a harmonious emotional state. When you're stressed, frustrated, angry, anxious, out of sorts, it's a very jagged, irregular pattern. And the more upset you are, the more earthquake-like it looks, and it's sending that signal to the brain, eliciting the stress response. So that's a very powerful way the heart and brain talk to each other. And that's what HeartMath is focused on mostly, to create interventions and techniques to make that quick shift in heart rhythm pattern so people can open the heart, reopen the heart, and get that smooth, harmonious alignment between heart and brain going to access more of their higher potentials. Now, there's 3 other ways the heart communicates with the brain, but that one is the one we've most focused on. The heart's also reclassified as a hormonal gland. Nobody knew that before the 90s, that it produces as much oxytocin, the bonding hormone, as the brain. And then the heart's electromagnetic field, which is every beat, it's producing this field. And our emotional state is transmitted through that field to our environment. That's how we pick up on each other's vibes. So the heart is just this incredible instrument that is a master controller of a lot of our whole body. And that's why we focus on helping people understand it's heart time on the planet, because that's what's going to allow our brain to optimize.
So very interesting stuff. I want to ask you one more biological type of question before I move into more of the dynamics around leadership and company formation and development. But a lot of discussion, not only about the brain, certainly about the heart, but you mentioned about the vagal nerve, and we've also talked about the whole ecosystem around the microbiome and that whole system being another brain. How does the heart work in conjunction with that whole system? And do you also, is your systems and sensors, do you speak about that in terms of some of your education as well around the microbiome and what goes on in the whole digestive system?
Well, if you look at the autonomic nervous system, which controls 90% of the body's involuntary functions, digestion, immune response, hormonal response, sleep, breath rate, all of that. And the heart rate variability is a reflection of the interaction of the 2 branches, parasympathetic and sympathetic. So if we're constantly stressed, those 2 are constantly fighting each other and out of whack. And that affects the microbiome. It affects all of our involuntary functions. Immune, we get colds if we are stressed too much. It affects our sleep, and people's sleep rhythms are really disrupted when they have anxiety or can't shut their mind off, or even in this time where you feel the stress waves of the virus going on in the planet. We pick all that up through our energetic electromagnetic field. So think of the heart as a receiving station, how we feel, as well as a transmitting station. And so it is tremendously affecting the autonomic nervous system. It's not just the brain controls the heart through the ANS. That is a misnomer that we were taught in school. The heart is actually controlling a lot of that by how it is picking up frequencies through this electromagnetic field. It is an electromagnetic system. And so, yes, it affects the microbiome. And the cool thing is, before science can ever prove it all out, we can go to our heart. We can get our heart rhythm smooth. We can activate the qualities of the heart that all major religions and spiritual and native traditions have talked about. And they're not just goody two-shoe things to do. Love, appreciation, care, kindness, compassion. These are all feelings, attitudes that generate heart rhythm coherence, which is that synchronized mode in the heart rhythm that pulls alpha rhythms and brainwave rhythms into coherence and helps us connect with nature in coherence. And we study all of that at HeartMath with magnetic field detectors, as well as our inner balance and M-wave technology. and the software that goes with it.
It's fascinating stuff. Wanted to kind of delve a little bit more in the fact that ultimately we're talking about some concepts and topics that traditionally in the scientific world would be considered woo-woo. So of course, when we think about love, you know, as children we're brought up to signify these through symbols of the heart shape. And that's what we give away to people at Valentine's Day and that sort of thing. But what you're really talking about is almost like a demystification of the abstraction of it and into something that's much more technical, verifiable, and something that can be studied. So as we kind of explore, maybe kind of going back to the earlier years when you were just meditating and it was kind of considered woo-woo, can you actually share with us the evolution of that demystification and how you've seen the scientific community and the more spiritual community perhaps come to a place of union?
That's a great question. So when I was studying behavioral psychology and I was a meditator, and I was trying to figure out how to put it all together, what was really interesting is that the Eastern and Western traditions, meditative traditions, people intuitively knew. It was developed through intuition, not through scientific research, and through getting into higher consciousness. The leaders, the teachers, the wise shamans, the wise people were giving these tools and techniques and telling people, love, care, forgive, because it's for you, it connects you with the universe, all that. And so I experienced a lot of that, but when I met Dr. Childering, we started the HeartMath Institute. The whole idea was not to have another philosophy out of California. It was, can we find the actual physiological correlates to these experiences? And can we research it? And we looked at brain waves, skin conductance, all sorts of biofeedback before we discovered the space between the heartbeats reveals the information. And that's where we developed techniques and tools. But our whole strategy and mission was, it had to be based on science. It had to have a bridge of research. At that time, there were very few studies. Positive psychology hadn't started on positive emotional states. It was all the negative emotions: anxiety, depression, anger. And so this whole new field of what happens when we feel uplifted, when we feel loving, when we feel caring or compassionate, how does that affect the immune system, the hormonal system, the brain? You know, Dr. Dean Ornish discovered it was one of the keys, the number one key to cardiovascular health. So this all started to happen, not just at HeartMath, where it became scientifically validated that the heart is where we are modulating a lot of emotional information. Here's an example. We say, I love you with all my heart. We don't say, I love you with all my head. So it's not, everybody laughs when we say that, because we all know that. We feel in this area. We don't feel much up here. And that's a key to intervention and transformation, is go where we are feeling it and interacting with it. So HeartMath system is a series of techniques, tools, technology to interact with our heart rhythm, our autonomic nervous system. And there's been over 400 independent, peer-reviewed, published papers based upon our research on heart rhythm coherence since the mid-90s, how it affects the brain, performance, health, as well as our connection to something bigger than ourselves.
So I think what's really going to be interesting here, because like I said, we have an ecosystem of neurotech, device companies, all sorts of people either in the startup phase, or they're already companies that are doing well. They're just looking for more expansion, continuation, education. So kind of going back a little bit and being able to share some of these nuggets and these experiences as you're looking at a company that might be frontiering something or pioneering something, especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a whole myriad of not only challenges, but I also like to say opportunities.
Right.
So people are kind of navigating some of these new principles. What would be some of these best practices as you kind of go back in history and think about those challenges that your company was faced with, being new, being considered somewhat of this like outrageous new woo-woo thing that's now being demystified and science, and kind of brought back into the scientific community. What were some of the steps that you took in terms of developing the business model to get it a little bit more into a fast track?
Well, we started with a mission, a vision, and that's number one. I don't care what you're doing. It's not about what new tech can I create that's going to make money, especially in this climate. You want to know, what is your passion? What is that you're really trying to help people with? That's the underpinning of transformational technology, which we're on the advisory board, one of the founding advisors of it, because transformation is key to all of this. Transtech is what is going to help people transform. It has to be interactive. So that was our guiding principle. And you want to investigate the research to see what aspect of transformation you want to be involved in. There's so much opportunity because it is everything from physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and putting it all together is optimal. That's what we've been trying to do. So when we started, given that we had this realization and mission to activate the heart, we realized that if we could help activate the heart of humanity, it would lift consciousness, it would lift vibration, individually, in groups, in businesses, in families, in everywhere, because it applies to everything we do, in sports. And so unlike most common sense entrepreneurs and businesses I'd run before, we looked at the model as like yeast, so that the whole bread would rise. And we went into multiple markets at the same time, put our toe in to see how to language this stuff that could be considered woo-woo into scientific language so that the mind would understand. And here we are in Silicon Valley area, the engineers who live from the head up would understand they need to shift to here if they wanted to be more productive, more high performing, and have less stress. So we started off with stress management because everybody could understand that, and everyone in the 90s felt there was some stress and stress would be an issue. Well, look at what's happened, as far as the huge increase in stress and anxiety and depression. So we gave people tools for emotional self-regulation. That's the word that ties it all together. Because I don't care if you're spiritual, meditator, athlete, wherever you are, trying to perform better, trying to have a better relationship with your kids or your spouse, if you don't know how to regulate your emotional responses, and that's not to stuff it or vent it, it's a self-management, maintain poise as you move, you're not going to access your higher reasoning or your intuition of best decision making. And so we focused on that and developed training programs around that for different markets with language in different markets. Way before we were able to develop technology, we developed our first HRV coherence feedback technology in 1998. But we were doing our research and training programs for stress management and inner quality management in businesses and the heart of healthcare in all these different markets beforehand. So we were a training company and wrote books. And then we realized we didn't need to take all this computer big equipment and show people in real time on the stage what happens when they shift from recalling an angry experience to a loving experience and see their heart rhythms shift in real time. That was such a wow for everybody. We could actually create a consumer product so people could do it for themselves and get points and have gamification and make it a process so they can increase their baseline, because the whole key of transformation is to change baseline responses, whether it's immune, hormonal, brainwave, heart rhythm. You want to have more naturally occurring harmony and coherence in the system, human system, and you want your technology to develop to facilitate that. But I would say you're going to need training programs to go with it. Otherwise, people use it and put it on the shelf. Fitbit found that out and developed a whole series of programs, every tech, and that's expensive. So, I mean, over the years, we have certification programs for health professionals, workshop trainers, we have a whole cadre of things, an ecosystem, and we're still turning it all digital and online. We're still evolving it with the market. And certainly now, everything's got to go online just about. So you can't really do traditional 3 or 5 year planning because nobody knows where this economy is going to be. So I go back to basics. What's your passion? What do you see could make a difference in people's lives? Because you can put your heart and soul into that. Then what is a way you can start to economize that one step at a time and listen to life as your biofeedback, the marketplace, and grow that way. Don't bite off more than you can chew. You might get venture funding and you might have a big burn rate, but in this economy, you're probably not going to make it if you do that. You want to, even if you want to minimize your burn rate and see what you can do in the marketplace one step at a time. That's my advice.
I love it. And I think you brought up so many great nuggets there, which is ride the coattails of what's working today.
Yeah.
Use the language that people are acclimatized or have already built habit stacks on. Kind of ride that and then start pivoting and building and developing as you're bringing people on. And that's actually, you're leveraging education and basically building people's habits through education. So it sounds like a really interesting process. And what you also shared there is that this is a long-term play. It's not a like blow everybody out of the water with this pivotal thing and expect that you're going to make billions of dollars and everybody's going to have a gazelle, right? So you're talking about the long road and the long ship. So I want to talk a little bit about, some people actually have co-founded companies with other people. Sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're strangers, sometimes they're investors. Can you share with us some of the learnings that you have with how do you deal with conflict? What happens if there's a disagreement in how the direction of the company or the vision of the company? What advice would you give to people in that arena?
Well, we see that everywhere in mergers, acquisitions, even in social cause groups. Sometimes they're the most dysfunctional, even if they have a great cause, for ecology or nonviolent communication or anything, unless they know how to self-regulate their own emotional responses, there's going to be tremendous discord and a lot of things fall apart. We get called in to do training programs, or some of our certified trainers do, and a lot of dysfunctional social cause groups, meaning they're idealistic of what their vision and mission is, but they can't get along. So until we learn to get along with each other, whether it's in the family or the workplace, I don't think we're going to have harmony on this planet. So the key that we research personal coherence, both physiologically and emotionally, and we research social coherence. How do people really get along? And we created a whole program called Activating the Heart of Teams, which is a certification program for team leaders in business, because we think that's a key for transformation of this humanity, is to help business leaders learn techniques and tools to be able to communicate heart to heart, to be able to manage their emotional reactions, to be able to clear the histories, because you're bringing your own luggage and baggage from your family history into your workplace. And it's not an overnight process, but there are coherence tools. When you get internally coherent, which is our main focus, is how do you get heart, brain, nervous system, mind, emotions in sync and alignment, you have more of your potential to bring to a conversation or a business planning session. And so I can't tell you how many businesses use our M-Wave or Inner Balance technology before they have a meeting. And we do that at our own company. Either we just practice the technique for 3 minutes to get internally coherent. Then the conversation, the egos somehow go out of the way then. And the histories and the issues and the baggage get released to be able to focus fully present on the situation with more of who you really are. And that makes for wonderful working relationships. Sure, conflicts are going to come up, but HeartMath has developed a set of techniques and tools, and there's others out there, for conflict resolution. But if it's just head to head, it takes a long time. If you can get in a heart coherence first and then communicate from the heart, magic happens. And I sincerely have seen this over and over for 20 years. John Gottman, who is one of the leading psychologists for marital dysfunction, he uses our M-Wave technology, gives each partner, after court-assigned domestic violence, if you want to say that extreme, disputes, and they each have to get in the green on the M-Wave before they can talk. And it cuts the time and gets them closer connected in the heart so they can really hear each other, understand where each other's coming from, and which is the key. It's not just empathy. It's true understanding and compassion where you're not sucked into the other person's stuff. And so as a whole field, as a behavioral psychologist, I could talk forever about that. But back to your question, you're starting a business and you got different stakeholders with different motivations. You've got to be able to clear the slate and get everybody into I call it a coherent state to talk honestly about what they want, what they achieve, what their expectations are, and see if you can come to some common agreement. And if you don't do that at the beginning, it's bound to create dysfunction as you go. And then you still have to get there.
There's many companies right now, and thanks for that. There's so many great pearls of wisdom there. Many companies obviously are having to rethink a lot of things, not only their business models, potentially their supply chains, funding options. There's a whole myriad of things, and this could potentially be an extremely stressful time even for the people within this ecosystem. But tell me a little bit about your thoughts or advice that you would give, like if you were to talk back to yourself back in the day with all the information that you have today, of what routes would you go around funding or not funding? What are the options? What do you see are being the advantages and disadvantages? And maybe sharing with what your experience was in the building and the development and the, obviously success of HeartMath.
That's a deep question. Right now, we never wanted to compromise our mission or vision. As soon as you accept funding from a VC, they run your mission because you are answering to them as the shareholder. Same thing what's happening in the stock market these days, the whole short-term drive that sacrifices the long-term value. And that is a challenge of the whole system. And that's being threatened right now economically. And some people would say that's good, that's healthy. I think for looking back, I actually raised funds in the early days to develop our technology from angel investors who were people who had transformational experiences through our techniques. People, cardiologists who said it changed his life and explained cardiology. So we accepted funding from people who were mission people. And I had a number of VCs as HeartMath got more successful, coming to me wanting to invest in HeartMath. And I couldn't do it. When I read those documents, I go, my heart would sink. I said, we don't need that. We'd rather grow slower, one step at a time, than compromise our values, our core values of who we are. And I never regretted that. At one point, we did accept some debt financing from consciousness-oriented companies. So they loved our mission. They were mission-aligned people. But it happened to be right after the 2009 crash, and we were never able to fully recover and reach our revenue goals. And then it took us years to pay off that debt, which was fairly high interest. We thought we'd pay it off quickly and it would just boost us. So that was painful. And in retrospect, I don't know if I would do that. I mean, we're going to go under, but we might have had to contract a little bit in order to expand. So I would say, unless your investor is mission aligned and in it for the long game, I wouldn't even bother. And even then, keep making sure your goals are the same after the investment, and make sure that if your partner investor changes their priorities, that you are still secure. Otherwise, you could go under. So in this day and age, one of the beautiful things that's happening is there's so much heart awakening with this coronavirus, people caring for each other. families coming together. Let's look at the bright side of it. There's probably not been any more compassion and love and care for each other as well as ourselves through this on this planet ever. And that puts out a frequency, that puts out an energy of hope while there's other stuff's going on. And I know many people who say, gosh, I hope we never go back to the old normal, but I don't know what the new looks like. So we're in this transition, and this transtech can really help the transition if your messaging is full of compassion and you're looking for ways to help guide people through this process. And you're listening to your intuition, which means getting your own heart and brain in sync. And, you know, we're here to co-create. I believe the new world is co-creation, collaboration. We don't have all the answers by any means, and nobody does. But, you know, we're going to be putting our algorithm into a Unity plugin, so game developers can develop it using our sensor. And we're looking at how to get low-cost sensor, but still have the accuracy that we have, because there's nothing much out there that's convenient other than a chest strap that's accurate, because coherence measurement for health improvement and performance improvement needs to be really accurate. So, you know, I hope this is helpful, but I don't want to scare anyone, but I don't want you to bite off more than you can chew or get into trouble.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I've been hearing so many other people iterate the same thing that you just said, people who've gone through funding and ventures and sort of like speaking about exactly what you've just mentioned, people who've gone through the sell-off of their company in a similar vein. So on that note, one of the things I'm hearing you say very clearly, Deborah, is really there's this level of authenticity, connection, and authentic partnership that we're starting to talk about as we develop our tribes or, you know, our specific niche in customers. So I think beforehand, many, many years ago, when we were talking about blockbuster products, we were talking about kind of lambasting the world with our messages. And today we're talking about very specialized messages. We're talking about really refining what it is that we are and saying to people and connecting with those people. In this day and age, one of the things I am finding is an inundation of information and distractions. Everybody's running a webinar. There's probably 10 other ones going on at the same time as this one. What advice would you give, not only based on what you did historically, but based on what you've seen today on getting your customer base, getting your tribe and other people to follow you? And I'm also curious if the people that followed you at the beginning are the same people who are with you today.
Well, first of all, our management team and most of our staff have been with us 15, 20 years, some from the beginning, and we're still here. And yet there's a huge number of people on our list that have been with us since the 90s and a long time, because I think we could have had even more of that loyalty if we had focused on community, which we're doing now this year, and connecting people and having them support each other and how they're using HeartMath tools and technology, because everybody wants to share and have peer support. And that's our next level of community building in that way, but doing it intelligently and gradually where we can monitor it, manage it. So people want to connect. And I think that's really, really important. Authenticity, especially if you want to reach the younger generations, is super important. And so I think that at this point, you yourself learning your own skills for emotional management, for accessing your intuitive guidance, or getting your heart, brain in sync is the most important thing, because that's going to give you more inner clarity of what you should do in terms of following what's best for you and the wholeness. I couldn't emphasize that enough, that it's really the individual and then you and your closest associates and who's running your company. If you're not in harmony, in sync, you know, in team synchronization, you're not going to optimize your opportunity. And so in this day and age, it's first you get yourself centered, you work and get your staff, your team that way, and then keep using the techniques and tools as the stress waves keep coming through to be able to stay clear on your choices, because there's going to be choice points, hinge points that are going to really be important all along the way.
Beautiful. There's a lot of people who are writing comments in here wanting to ask questions. So I could be asking you questions all day. You're sort of one of the most eloquent, wonderful, delightful speakers I've ever heard. And I feel such a great gravity and connection to your wonderful energy. And I'm sure a lot of people are feeling that. So I am actually going to open this up. I'm going to ask James Besnet who we have online if they actually want to turn on their video. And if they want to actually ask their question, let me just double check that you are not unmuted. James, can you actually?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? I have to tell you that there's been a number of webinars over the last 45 or 60 days. And the number of bombs that you've dropped today, Deb, is higher than anyone. There's a higher heart bomb density, per hour here than I think I've had the privilege of being a part of. So thank you so much. And I'm just getting the feeling from all the, from our chat, from our group here, everybody. Unmute, there we go. Deb, I just want to thank you for that. And I think this would be the moment that we would love to clap for you. So we have Spencer here. Spencer's got some great questions. He's been lighting up chat, and we want to let Spencer just throw a question in here for the group. And if I can ask, and everybody who is in the webinar right now to hit mute, and then we will unmute the person who's asking the question.
Maybe we can have the host mute everybody.
There we go. Okay. All right, Spencer, take it away.
Yeah, it would still be helpful if we could get JC on mute. There we go. Awesome. Hey, Deborah, thank you so much for making time to do this. This is awesome. My question is about systems change, and it feels like we're in a time of relative systemic decline, just in the sense that it feels like public education is failing and public health is failing, addiction, suicide, obesity, sexual abuse, like just kind of anywhere we turn, it feels like systems are declining. And I'm curious, I mean, I think the implications of the HeartMath work are astounding, but I'm curious what you see as the greatest point of leverage for starting to create a shift in the systemic decline that we're facing, to create a system that can work for a sustainable planet or a regenerative society.
Well, I actually feel a shift is happening. And in order for a new consciousness to come in, the old has to be disrupted. So what we're seeing in the systems breaking up is part of it. If you look at it from a higher perspective, a bigger global perspective, like the mountaintop, the way I try to, you can see the disruption happening. It's like things being turned upside down so they can be more aligned and come right side up. So we're in this process, and we're here to facilitate that into something new. And the new to me is what we've been talking about. It's the heart. It's ancient in that all the ancient cultures have said it's about the heart. The heart's a source of wisdom. But we really, that's why we say it's heart time on the planet. Activating this potential of our heart connection to raise consciousness is key. And so I feel that the science and spirituality coming together is what's going to give us a view, and more people having that intuitive understanding, coming together to work for the wholeness and have that inner security to do that. It's going to show the way for others, both energetically, because a lot of this is going to be energetics as people awaken and open up, as well as specific tools, techniques, technologies that can facilitate this. So I think it's amazing what's going on. And yeah, again, the answer is the heart. If we don't go through the door of the heart, the brain's never going to unfold itself to more potential. The two are disconnected. And if there's anything we've proven, it's that. So getting that word out, and however people want to be creative with that then. But love is... the science is an intelligence. Activating that heart energy and those qualities of the heart are aspects of love, and that is a higher intelligence function. So as Einstein's often quoted statement, you can't solve our problems from the same level of consciousness that created them. We've got to lift consciousness in some way. And I think that shift is accelerating. It's happening right now. Who would have predicted the coronavirus would shut down the planet and have everybody slow down, have to go within, ponder what's going on, whatever they do with it. I mean, it's amazing that that even happened. So I think there's just an awesome global shift happening. I mean, the Earth's cleaned up so much pollution in the 30 days it's been shut down. That's giving a lot of environmentalists hope, like, oh, maybe we can change things. I think there's a lot to be discovered, and it's up to us to do our part by being harmonious with each other. If we don't have harmonious interactions and learn how to do that, and the one-on-one and the small group and the workplace level, it's never going to happen in the political and the planetary level.
Thanks. And quick follow-up question would just be, what do you find as, so again, I feel like the work that HeartMath is doing, the implications of the work are incredible, and that if more people were aware of what the science is saying, that we would see even greater change or even more shift happening more rapidly. And so I'm just curious what you find as obstacles to awareness of the work that HeartMath is doing, and maybe more mainstream adoption. I mean, I know you guys are doing work with really interesting organizations at the top of their industries, but it still seems relatively not like a mainstream awareness.
For sure. All through the years, the obstacles have been the yoga or spiritual people didn't think they needed technology or techniques, and they are coming to the realization because of all the stress they're experiencing, the humbling of, wait a minute, we do need to deal with stress and anxiety. How come I'm a 20-year meditator and I can't sleep and I'm stressed and I have a chronic disease? So people are waking up to what's missing for them. That's that end of the spectrum. Then you have the traditional academics who don't even bother studying our research. In fact, just one quick story. We had a professor at Northwestern University, a cardiologist, who actually coined the term heart rate variability. And when we were doing our initial research, Dr. Don Singer, he came out to study HeartMath with the idea of debunking us. But at least he investigated this. This was in the mid-90s. He's now deceased. And after seeing that, when we got hooked up to this big equipment and he was watching the HRV pattern change as we changed emotional state, his jaw dropped. He was in his 70s then. And he became a total follower on our scientific advisory board, everything. So that's the process. People are still in their little groups and believe what their peers say, whether it's academic or whether it's in other systems. And you see that right now with the political polarization. Fox News followers only think that's real. They don't even know the other. And same with CNN news followers. The social media has created even more belief system buckets. And so that's the problem. So our validation is happening more and more through having the yeast rising in that loaf of bread. Like there's over 130 chief nurses in the Kaiser healthcare system certified in HeartMath, and Dignity System, and Ascension Healthcare. And it's just spread through the hospital systems. Right now, with the healthcare workers' stress, it's exploding there. They're all wanting to use HeartMath, and the docs didn't want anything to do with it. And now they have high suicide rates, and they're saying, gosh, look what's happening with our nurses. We want HeartMath. Same with the school systems. Kids coming to school not emotionally able to learn. So it is happening, and there's a larger universal flow, and that's why we're giving away the HeartMath experience. It's an interactive movie technology on our learning management system with 10-minute segments, so the millennials and younger will watch it or learn from it, and video-based program with beautiful visuals and 5 scientifically validated techniques for stress, anxiety, accessing intuition, plus our science, enough science to understand why it works, and then being able to access your intuition and what's happening on the planet. So this was our effort before the coronavirus to help, just what you're saying, reach more mainstream. And then, excuse me, when the virus hit, we went, okay, we're not even going to sell this now. We're going to give it away. And it's been amazing. Just in 2 weeks, we've had over 60,000 downloads through our networks and over 18,000 new people in our database that never had been heard of HeartMath before. So I want to encourage you all to send it to your networks if you enjoy it. See it for yourself, practice the tools.
Deborah, we only have a few minutes left, so I'm actually just going to ask for some pithy responses back to a couple of people, and there's a lineup of people, and I'm sure we're going to have to follow up with these questions. But we've got Gareth on the line, and followed by that, we'll find a final question from Andy. So Gareth, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sure. Deborah, thanks so much. My question was that I own a business, and let's say I have my team call on Friday. I've got my notes from this call, but I'm curious what your advice would be to just, if I can, help them understand the heart coherence and HeartMath basic principles. What are the best practices or things that I can share with them just on one call right now to get them started down this path? Do you have any recommendations for how I can either speak about this and a practice I can give to my team, let's say this Friday on my next team call?
The quickest answer to that would be download the free HeartMath experience, watch the first chapter, 10 minutes, and you'll know what to do. There's one technique in there. You can start with that, and it gives you a background, or show it to them. It's just 10 minutes, and that's why we created it, so that people would know how to talk about this and use a quick coherence technique.
And just to speak on that, there will be a follow-up not only to this particular recording of this webinar, but there will also be a link to and all of the access information so you can get that free download. So thank you again, Deborah, for that. Thanks for the question, Gareth. We're going to be moving to Andy Swindler now, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi, yeah, huge fan of HeartMath. Thanks for everything. I'm just most curious about what sounds like a relatively new initiative to offer a plug-in to other systems. So what would be the best way to follow along with that evolution?
Send me an email. We're not ready yet, but I'm gathering names because, again, I think gamification through the Unity plugin is the way to reach the kids, the planet. That's my hope, anyway. And just email me to drozman@heartmath.com.
Awesome, thank you.
Love it, Andy. Thank you. Love your pithy questions and comments. Last one is Cynthia. I've unmuted you if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for the session. It's been amazing. I'm a small business owner. I've been working on a concept for 6 years now or so on how to practice self-compassion and improving self-talk. It's kind of like gamified with characters. And my question is really like small companies like mine, how do I, can I interact with HeartMath? Because you're the hardware that can really show the work that I do works, right? And do you have any kind of standard ways of interacting with small potential, budding companies?
I wish we did, but we don't have the bandwidth to do that. So what I do tell people is get the inner balance or the M-Wave. The M-Wave Pro.
I have it.
And practice what you teach with it and see what creates the most coherence, what creates the most synchronization. Write that up and say, hey, with the M-Wave Pro, you can actually prove this out to yourself. That'll take your cards to a whole other level. And then you can become a distributor and affiliate and make money on selling the technology.
That sounds like a pretty good start.
Awesome. We have one other question from somebody named Mariana. Mariana, did you want to ask your question?
Yes. Yes. Do you listen to me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. No, thanks a great deal for the conference. Really, I enjoyed very much. My question is regarding leaders. When a leader has a team and you want to have a coherence among the members of the team and alignment with the purpose of anyone for the company, what do you suggest an exercise for help the team to work in coherence?
Right. Well, I think, again, the HeartMath experience will share that with you. We have team coherence exercises on there. If you yourself are are interested in specializing more in that, we have our Activating the Heart of Teams program. I mean, we have our, and also our Building Personal Resilience. They're all online training programs.
Okay.
So go to heartmath.com and explore what's there. But I encourage everybody to start with the HeartMath experience, and then you'll know.
Yeah, we do a lot of gamification in our company also, but sometimes we really think that we got the point, but maybe we need to go more deeper. Yeah. So
well, we have a new app called the Global Coherence app.
Mm-hmm.
And that app is free. You can download it at the store, either Google Play or Apple Store. It works with the inner balance sensor, or you can use it without. But if you really want team synchronization between 2 or more people,
right,
you can get sensors for each one. There's a group coherence part of it where you create your own private group. You see the collective average coherence among the group members as they practice the HeartMath quick coherence technique. They each see their heart rhythm. It assigns points and it gets a group average. That's really cool because then the group, classrooms use this. They're really motivated. Okay, let's go deeper in the heart. Just put out a little more care and compassion and we'll increase the group coherence points. So
thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you very much for that, Mariana. I'm actually going to go ahead and close the session. As you can see, very, very popular, Deborah, in our community, but I'm sure in communities in general. We just want to thank you not only for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to be with this group, but also the commitment, the passion, the dedication that you're giving back to the community and the world in general. I want to personally, on behalf of this entire group, to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the work and the love that you have transmitted to the world and everything that you inspire us to be and to do. So thank you for giving us the free gift. We are all looking forward to indulging in that and continue to look to be inspired by the great work that you do. So thank you again for your time. And we will look forward to seeing or speaking with you at some point post-COVID.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. Stay in your hearts. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.